When the elevator stops, everything changes. That's what Ethan Cole would tell you if you asked him about the night that split his life in two. But he won't tell you about the woman trapped beside him, or the baby bag clutched in her white-knuckled hands, or the fact that 17 floors above them, someone was already planning to destroy everything she had left. He won't tell you how a broken elevator became the least dangerous thing in that building. Not yet. If you want to know how a chance meeting between a billionaire and a struggling woman turned into a fight for survival, stay with me until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The rain came down like punishment. Ethan Cole stood under the cracked awning of Green Ridge Towers, watching water hammer the pavement hard enough to make it steam. His driver had offered to wait, to walk him to the door with an umbrella the size of a small tent, but Ethan had waved him off. He needed the cold, needed something sharp enough to cut through the fog that had settled over his brain after 12 hours of board meetings, legal briefs, and the kind of corporate warfare that left no visible wounds. 32 years old, and he felt 60. The building in front of him looked worse. Green Ridge Towers was 19 stories of crumbling brick and shattered dignity, the kind of place that had probably been decent once, maybe even nice, before decades of neglect had turned it into exactly the sort of property his company specialized in acquiring. Cheap, broken, profitable, if you knew what you were doing. Ethan knew what he was doing. He pushed through the front door into a lobby that smelled like mildew and someone's burnt dinner. The floor tiles were the color of old teeth. Half the overhead lights were dead. A security camera hung from the ceiling by 2 wires, pointing at nothing. His assistant had sent him here to check on the building personally. "You need to see the asset before we finalize," she'd said. "The property manager keeps dodging our calls." Ethan didn't usually do site visits himself. That's what he paid people for. But lately, he'd been looking for excuses to stay out of his own house, where his 6-year-old daughter asked questions he couldn't answer, and the silence reminded him of everything he'd lost. So here he was, wet shoes, empty stomach, standing in a lobby that looked like it was auditioning for a demolition permit. The elevator was around the corner, past a bulletin board covered in angry notes about rent increases and broken washing machines. Ethan glanced at them as he passed. Someone had written "Hale is a crook" in red marker across a notice about late fees. He filed the name away. Victor Hale, property manager. The man his company would probably have to fire within the first month. The elevator doors were dented stainless steel, scratched to hell. Ethan pressed the call button and waited. Somewhere above him, cables groaned. The number display flickered, 12, 11, 10, descending in arthritic increments. When the doors finally opened, there was already someone inside. A woman, 30 maybe, thin in a way that looked more like exhaustion than design. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had given up halfway through the day. She wore scrubs under a jacket that had seen better years, and she was leaning against the elevator wall like it was the only thing keeping her vertical. In her arms was a diaper bag covered in cartoon elephants. She looked at Ethan the way you look at something unexpected and vaguely annoying. He looked back and saw someone who probably worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent. "Going up?" he asked. "Wouldn't be standing here if I wasn't," she said. "Fair enough." Ethan stepped inside. The woman hit the button for the 14th floor. He pressed 17, though he wasn't sure there was anything up there worth seeing. The doors rattled shut, and the elevator lurched upward with the confidence of a dying animal. Neither of them spoke. Ethan watched the numbers climb. 3, 4. The woman shifted the diaper bag from one shoulder to the other and stifled a yawn that looked like it came from somewhere deep in her bones. 5, 6. "Long day?" Ethan asked, because the silence was starting to feel hostile. "Every day's long," the woman said without looking at him. 7, 8. Then the elevator made a sound Ethan had never heard machinery make before, a grinding shriek followed by a mechanical cough, and the whole car jolted sideways. The lights went out. Ethan's stomach dropped into his shoes as the elevator jerked to a stop so sudden he had to brace himself against the wall to keep from falling. The woman made a startled noise, clutching the diaper bag to her chest. For 3 seconds, there was nothing but darkness and the sound of their breathing. Then the emergency light kicked on, a sickly yellow glow that made everything look like it was dying. Ethan straightened, looked at the display. They were stuck between the 8th and ninth floors. You've got to be kidding me, the woman said. She jabbed the button for the 14th floor. Nothing. Tried the 9th. The 8th. The door open button. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Ethan pulled out his phone. No signal. Of course not. This building probably had walls made of lead and spite. There's an emergency call button, he said, scanning the panel. The woman was already pressing it. A crackling sound came from the speaker above their heads, then a voice that sounded like it was being transmitted from the bottom of a well. Yeah? We're stuck, the woman said, between 8 and 9. I can see that. So what are you going to do about it? A pause. Working on it. Sit tight. The line went dead. The woman closed her eyes and let her head fall back against the wall. Of course this happens tonight. Ethan studied her. Up close, she looked younger than he'd thought, also more tired than anyone should look. There were dark circles under her eyes and a coffee stain on the sleeve of her jacket. You live here? He asked. What gave it away? Lucky guess. She opened one eye and gave him a look that suggested she was reassessing whether he was worth the energy it would take to be sarcastic. 14th floor, she said finally. Apartment 1407. You? I don't live here. I'm just visiting. Visiting? She said the word like it was a foreign concept. Who visits Greenridge Towers? Someone who's thinking about buying it. That got both eyes open. She turned to look at him properly for the first time, and Ethan saw something sharp move behind her exhaustion. You're one of them, she said. One of who? The developers, the investors, the people who show up in suits and decide whether we get to keep our homes. Ethan didn't have a good answer for that, mostly because she wasn't wrong. I'm Ethan, he said instead. Ethan Cole. The woman stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, and it wasn't a happy sound. Nora Bennett, she said. And you just bought the building I'm about to be evicted from. So that's fun. I haven't bought anything yet, but you're going to. Maybe. Then let me save you some time. Nora shifted the diaper bag again, and Ethan noticed for the first time how much tension she was carrying in her shoulders. The wiring's a death trap. The plumbing hasn't been updated since 1987. Half the apartments have mold. The roof leaks. And the property manager is stealing from everyone stupid enough to still live here. Victor Hale? Her eyebrows went up. You've done your homework. I saw his name on the bulletin board. Someone called him a crook. That was probably me. Despite everything, the broken elevator, the fluorescent emergency light making them both look like corpses, the fact that he'd been awake for 19 hours, Ethan almost smiled. What's he stealing? He asked. What isn't he? Nora said. Security deposits, maintenance fees. Last month he tried to charge me $300 because he said I broke the lock on my door. I didn't break it. It was broken when I moved in 5 years ago. But he's got the paperwork and I don't, so guess who pays? Ethan filed that away too. If his company did end up buying the building, Hale would be gone by the end of the week. I'm sorry, he said. Nora gave him a look that suggested she'd heard that before, and it hadn't helped. Yeah, well, you're not the one raising my rent every 6 months. How much? How much what? How much is your rent? She hesitated, like the question might be a trap. $1,800. Used to be $1,200, 3 years ago. Ethan did the math in his head. 50% increase in 3 years, in a building that was barely habitable. That wasn't market rate. That was targeted harassment. Do you have somewhere else you could go? He asked. If I did, do you think I'd still be here? Another fair point. The elevator gave a faint shudder, like it was thinking about moving, then settled back into stillness. Nora closed her eyes again. How long have you been working today? Ethan asked. Why do you care? I don't know, making conversation. Since 6 this morning. I've got 2 shifts at the diner 3 days a week. The rest of the week I clean offices downtown. That's a lot of hours. That's rent in this city. She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity, and somehow that made it worse. Ethan leaned against the opposite wall, trying to take some of the weight off his bad knee. An old injury from college, back when he'd thought he might play football professionally before his father's company had collapsed and left him with more important things to worry about. The diaper bag, he said. You have a kid? Nora's expression shifted just slightly. Something softer moved across her face. My niece. She's 8 months old. I watch her while my sister works nights. What's her name? Why are you asking me questions? Because we're stuck in an elevator and I'd rather talk than sit in silence for however long this takes. Nora studied him, and Ethan had the uncomfortable feeling of being assessed and found wanting. Lily, she said finally. Her name's Lily. That's a good name. I didn't pick it. Still good. The emergency light flickered. For a second, Ethan thought it might go out entirely, but it caught again and held. Do you have kids? Nora asked. A daughter. Emma. She's 6. What's she doing tonight? Staying with her grandmother. I had meetings. On a Tuesday night? Every night lately. Nora made a non-committal sound. Must be nice, having someone to watch her. It is, Ethan admitted, though my mother thinks I rely on her too much. Do you? Probably. Another tremor ran through the elevator, stronger this time. Nora's hand shot out to steady herself against the wall. The diaper bag slipped and Ethan caught it before it hit the floor. Thanks, Nora said, taking it back. No problem. They stood there in the ugly yellow light, two strangers who had nothing in common except bad timing and a broken elevator. Can I ask you something? Nora said. Sure. When you buy this building, and you're going to, I can tell, what happens to people like me? Ethan wanted to lie. Wanted to tell her that everything would be fine, that his company specialized in affordable housing and tenant protections and all the other things that sounded good in press releases. But he didn't. I don't know yet, he said. Depends on the condition of the building. Depends on whether it makes financial sense to renovate or demolish. Demolish? Maybe. And the people living here? Would have to relocate. Nora nodded slowly, like he'd just confirmed something she'd already known. $1,800 a month, she said quietly, and I'm barely hanging on. You know what rent is in the buildings they'll move us to? $2,500, $3,000, and you have to make 3 times the rent to even apply, which means I'd need to be making $90,000 a year. Do I look like I'm making $90,000 a year? Ethan didn't answer. I'm going to lose my home, Nora said, and there's nothing I can do about it, because people like you show up in your nice suits and your expensive shoes, and you look at buildings like this and see profit margins. You don't see the single mom on the 5th floor who works at the hospital. You don't see the old man on 12 who's lived here since 1993. You don't see me working 70 hours a week just to keep a roof over my head. She wasn't yelling. That was the worst part. She was just tired. Stating facts. Ethan felt something twist in his chest that might have been guilt or might have been anger at a system he benefited from but hadn't built. You're right, he said. Nora blinked. What? You're right. I don't see it, not the way you do. I see numbers and reports and investment potential. I see a building that's falling apart and a property manager who's probably corrupt. But I don't see 70-hour weeks. I don't see what it costs you to be here. So why do it? Because it's what I'm good at, and because after my wife died, work was the only thing that made sense. He hadn't meant to say that last part. It just came out, dragged up from somewhere he usually kept locked down tight. Nora's expression changed. Not to pity, Ethan would have hated that, but to something closer to recognition. I'm sorry, she said, and she meant it. Thank you. They were quiet for a while. The elevator creaked. Somewhere far above them, pipes rattled. How long ago? Nora asked. 2 years, car accident. She was coming home from her sister's place and someone ran a red light. That's terrible. It was fast, that's what they told me. Like that's supposed to help. Does it? No. Nora shifted her weight, and Ethan saw her wince. You okay? He asked. Feet hurt, been standing since noon. Sit down. On the floor, in here? Why not? Because I don't know when this thing was last cleaned. Fair point, but your feet don't care. Nora hesitated, then slid down the wall until she was sitting with her legs stretched out in front of her. She let out a long breath that sounded like it had been held since the morning. Ethan sat down across from her on the opposite side of the elevator. His knee complained, but he ignored it. Better? He asked. Don't patronize me. I'm not. I'm asking if sitting down helped. Yeah, it helped. The emergency light hummed above them. Ethan could hear rain hammering the building, faint but persistent. Could hear Nora's breathing evening out as her body started to accept that it might get a few minutes of rest. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "You're going to anyway. Why stay? If it's this hard, if the rent keeps going up and Hale's making your life hell, why not leave?" Nora looked at him like he'd asked why she didn't just grow wings and fly. "Because I don't have anywhere else to go," she said. "Because this is my home. Because my mom lived in this building before me and her mom before her, and even though it's falling apart and the landlord's a crook, it's mine. Or it was." "Your family's lived here that long?" "3 generations. My grandmother moved in when the building first opened, 1952. Back when it was nice. Back when they had a doorman and the elevator didn't try to kill you." Ethan did the math, 70-plus years. That was almost unheard of in this city, where people churned through apartments every 18 months and buildings got bought and flipped before the paint dried. "That's rare," he said. "It's about to be extinct." Something about the way she said it made Ethan's chest tighten again. He thought about Emma, about the house they lived in now that had never really felt like home because his wife had never been there. He thought about what it might feel like to lose the last place that held your history. "I'll look into Hale," he said. "When we finalize the purchase, I'll make sure someone audits his records." "Why?" "Because you're right. He's stealing. And if we're going to own this building, I want to know exactly what we're buying." Nora watched him with those sharp, tired eyes. "That's not going to stop you from demolishing it." "No," Ethan admitted. "It's not, but it might get you some of your money back." "I don't want money. I want a home." "I know." They sat there in the broken elevator between the 8th and 9th floors, and Ethan realized that for the first time in 2 years, he was having a conversation that felt real. Not the careful corporate negotiations or the therapeutic platitudes or the polite small talk with his daughter's teachers. This was just 2 people, stuck in a metal box, telling each other the truth because there was no point in lying. "What was she like?" Nora asked. "Your wife." Ethan closed his eyes. "Smart. Funny. She could fix anything. She rebuilt our deck one summer just because she didn't want to pay someone else to do it. Took her 6 weeks, and she was so proud when it was done." "Sounds like a good person." "She was. Emma's like her. Same stubborn streak, same laugh. Must be hard. Seeing her every day." "It is. It isn't. I don't know." Ethan ran a hand over his face. "Some days, I look at Emma and I see her mother, and it's this gift. Other days, it's a knife. I never know which it's going to be." Nora nodded. "My mom died 3 years ago, cancer. And I still walk into my apartment and expect her to be there, making tea, telling me I work too much." "I'm sorry." "Me too." The elevator shuddered again, more violently this time, and Nora grabbed the handrail. Ethan tensed, waiting for the cable to snap, for the whole car to drop like a stone. But it held. The speaker crackled to life. "Still there?" Nora grabbed the emergency button. "Where else would we be?" "Maintenance is on the way. Maybe another 20 minutes." 20 minutes? "Could be longer. System's pretty backed up." "Of course it is," Nora muttered. The speaker went dead again. 20 minutes, Ethan said. "You can handle 20 minutes." "Can I?" "You've handled worse." Nora gave him a look that was part irritation, part grudging agreement. Then she pulled the diaper bag onto her lap and started rummaging through it. "What are you looking for?" Ethan asked. "My phone charger. I had it this morning." "You won't get signal anyway." "I know, but if we're stuck here for another 20 minutes, I'm going to need something to do besides listen to you philosophize about real estate." Ethan almost laughed. "I wasn't philosophizing. You were definitely headed that direction." She found the charger, then discovered there was nowhere to plug it in. The elevator had exactly 2 features, a panel of buttons and a useless speaker. Nora shoved the charger back in the bag with more force than necessary. "Tell me about your niece," Ethan said. "Why?" "Because you looked happy when you mentioned her earlier." Nora hesitated. Then some of the tension left her shoulders. "She's perfect," Nora said quietly. "Which I know everyone says about babies, but Lily actually is. She's got these huge eyes, and when she laughs, it's the best sound in the world. My sister's a mess. She got pregnant at 19 and the dad disappeared. But Lily's perfect." "You watch her a lot?" Every night my sister works, which is most nights. That's good of you. She's family. You don't get to pick and choose with family. Ethan thought about his own mother, who'd raised him alone after his father died, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep him in private school, who now watched Emma while he buried himself in work. No, he said, you don't. The lights flickered again. This time they stayed off for a full 5 seconds before the emergency light kicked back on, dimmer than before. This building's a nightmare, Nora said. It's on my list. Your list of what? Buildings to condemn? Buildings to save. Maybe, Nora snorted. You can't save Greenridge. It's been dying for 30 years. I've saved worse. Have you? In Detroit, Baltimore. 3 buildings in Philadelphia that everyone said should be torn down. We renovated them, turned them into mixed-income housing. And how much did rent go up after you were done? Ethan didn't answer right away, because the truth was, rent had gone up. Not as much as it could have, but enough that some people couldn't afford to stay. It went up, he admitted. Exactly. But people had safer buildings, better infrastructure, places that weren't falling apart, places they could no longer afford. She had him there. The elevator gave another small shudder, and this time Ethan heard something new. A grinding sound from somewhere above them, like gears trying to catch. Is that good or bad? Nora asked. Probably good. Means they're trying to get it moving. Or it means the cable's about to snap. Optimistic. Realistic. The grinding continued for another 10 seconds, then stopped. The elevator settled into stillness again. Nora pulled her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. In the sickly emergency light, she looked younger and more fragile than she probably wanted to appear. Can I tell you something? She said. Sure. I'm scared. All the time. Scared I'm going to lose my apartment. Scared I'm going to lose my job. Scared my sister's going to move away and take Lily with her. Scared I'm going to end up like my mom, working until the day I die and having nothing to show for it. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to fix it. So he just sat there and listened, which maybe was what she needed. And then people like you show up, Nora continued, and you talk about saving buildings and making things better, but what you're really doing is erasing us. You're wiping out the people who've been here for decades so you can bring in people who can afford what we never could. That's not my intention. But it's the result. She was right, again. Ethan thought about all the buildings he'd bought, all the neighborhoods he'd transformed, all the press releases that talked about urban renewal and community development. He thought about the numbers on spreadsheets and the projections in PowerPoints, and he realized he'd stopped seeing the people those numbers represented. People like Nora. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For being part of the problem. Nora looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment something passed between them that might have been understanding. You're not the whole problem, she said. You're just the part I can yell at. Yell away. She almost smiled. I'm too tired to yell. The grinding sound started again, louder this time. The elevator jerked once, twice, then began to move. Not down, which Ethan had been bracing for, but up. Slowly, painfully. Like an old dog trying to remember how its legs worked, but moving. Nora scrambled to her feet, grabbing the handrail. Ethan stood more carefully, favoring his knee. The number display flickered to life. 9. The doors opened. Nora stepped out into the hallway and turned back to look at him. This is me, she said. I thought you were on 14. I am, but I'm taking the stairs. Smart. She shifted the diaper bag one more time, and Ethan saw how much effort it took for her to keep standing. Are you going to be okay? He asked. Why wouldn't I be? Because you've been working since 6 in the morning and you're about to climb 5 flights of stairs. I've done worse. I know, you keep saying that. Nora looked at him for a long moment, and Ethan saw something shift in her expression. Something that might have been curiosity, or might have been the beginning of trust. Why do you care? She asked. I don't know, Ethan said honestly, but I do. She nodded once, like that was answer enough. Then she turned and headed for the stairs. Ethan watched her go. Watched her disappear around the corner, the diaper bag bouncing against her hip, her shoulders carrying the weight of a day that wasn't over yet. The elevator doors started to close and he stuck his hand out to stop them. stepped back into the hallway. "Nora," he called. She stopped, turned. "Where do you work?" "The diner." "Lou's on Mercer Street. Why?" "Just wondering." She gave him a look that suggested she didn't believe him, but was too tired to argue. Then she was gone, the stairwell door swinging shut behind her. Ethan stood alone in the 9th-floor hallway of Green Ridge Towers, listening to rain hammer the building and feeling like something had shifted, like the last 45 minutes had cracked something open that he'd been keeping sealed for too long. He pulled out his phone. Still no signal. But he made a mental note: Lou's Diner, Mercer Street. Then he headed for the stairs himself, because there was no way in hell he was getting back in that elevator. By the time he reached the lobby, he was soaked again. A pipe had burst somewhere on the 14th floor, and water was cascading down the stairwell like an indoor waterfall. His shoes squelched, his suit was ruined, his knee was screaming, and for the first time in 2 years, Ethan Cole felt something other than numb. He stepped out into the rain and pulled out his phone. This time he had signal. He called his assistant. "I need everything we have on Green Ridge Towers," he said. "Property records going back 50 years, every transaction, every owner. And I need a full background check on the property manager, Victor Hale." "Tonight?" "Tonight." "Can I ask why?" Ethan looked back at the building. 19 stories of crumbling brick and broken promises. 3 generations of families who'd built lives in those apartments. One woman with a diaper bag and more courage than anyone he'd met in a boardroom. "Because something doesn't add up," he said, "and I want to know what we're really buying." He hung up and stood in the rain for another minute, watching lights flicker on and off in windows up and down the building, watching the city swallow the storm. Then he got in his car and told his driver to take him home. But first, he had the driver swing past Mercer Street. Lou's Diner was a narrow storefront wedged between a laundromat and a bodega, the kind of place that served breakfast all day and coffee that could strip paint. Through the window, Ethan could see Nora moving between tables, a coffee pot in one hand and exhaustion written across her face. She didn't see him. He watched her work for maybe 30 seconds, long enough to notice that she smiled at customers, even though her feet had to be killing her, long enough to see her stop at a table where an old man sat alone and pour him a free refill. Then he told his driver to keep going. He had work to do, and for the first time in a long time, the work felt like it might actually matter. The files arrived at 3 in the morning. Ethan was still awake, sitting in his home office with cold coffee and the kind of headache that came from staring at screens too long. Emma was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of his computer and the occasional creak of settling wood. His phone buzzed. An email from his assistant with 17 attachments. "Everything you asked for," the subject line read. "You owe me a vacation." Ethan opened the first file. Property records for Green Ridge Towers, starting in 1952. He scrolled through decades of transactions, ownership transfers, mortgage refinancings. The building had changed hands 8 times. Most of the sales were unremarkable, routine transfers between investment groups and property management companies. But there was a gap. Between 1986 and 1994, the ownership records got messy. Conflicting claims, legal disputes that had been settled out of court, and in the middle of it all, a name that made him stop scrolling. Bennett Holdings, LLC. Ethan sat up straighter. Bennett, like Nora Bennett. He opened another file. Corporate registration documents. Bennett Holdings had been incorporated in 1985 by a woman named Marion Bennett. The company had owned Green Ridge Towers for exactly 8 years before dissolving in 1994 under circumstances the records didn't fully explain. Marion Bennett. Nora had said her mother died 3 years ago. Had said her family had lived in the building for 3 generations. Ethan pulled up the background check on Victor Hale. 47 years old. Property manager for Green Ridge Towers since 2015. Before that, he'd worked for his father's company, Hale Property Management, which had coincidentally acquired Green Ridge Towers in 1994. The same year Bennett Holdings dissolved, Ethan's headache sharpened into something that felt like alarm bells. He spent the next 2 hours digging through everything he could find. Court records, business filings, news archives from the local paper. Most of it was boring procedural stuff, but there were fragments that didn't fit. A lawsuit filed by Marion Bennett in 1993 claiming fraud. a counterclaim by Hale Property Management. Both cases dismissed in 1994 with sealed settlements. Whatever had happened, someone had paid money to make sure it stayed quiet. Ethan leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten. He needed to sleep. Needed to be functional for the meetings he had in 6 hours. But sleep felt impossible. He thought about Nora in that elevator, bone-tired and angry, telling him she was scared of losing everything. He thought about 3 generations of her family living in a building that her mother had apparently once owned. And he thought about Victor Hale, raising rents and stealing security deposits and targeting Nora specifically. That didn't feel like random bad luck. That felt personal. When dawn finally broke for real, Ethan gave up on sleep entirely. He showered, dressed, checked on Emma, still asleep, clutching the stuffed rabbit his wife had given her, and headed out before his mother arrived to take over. He had his driver take him to Mercer Street. Lou's diner looked worse in daylight. The awning was torn, the windows needed washing, but it was open, and through the glass, Ethan could see a handful of early morning customers hunched over coffee and eggs. He went inside. The place smelled like bacon grease and burnt toast. A fan rattled overhead. The counter was cracked formica, and the stools were held together with duct tape. Behind the register, a man who had to be Lou, 60-something, built like a bear, tattoos up both arms, was shouting at someone in the kitchen about hash browns. Ethan took a booth by the window. A waitress who wasn't Nora brought him coffee without asking. He ordered eggs and toast he didn't want and waited. Nora showed up 20 minutes later, coming through the back entrance still pulling her hair into a ponytail. She looked like she'd gotten even less sleep than he had. There was a fresh coffee stain on her uniform, and her eyes had that glazed quality of someone running on fumes in spite. She didn't notice him at first, just grabbed an apron from behind the counter, tied it on, and started her shift like it was any other morning. Ethan watched her work. She moved efficiently, mechanically, the way you move when you've done the same job 1,000 times, and your body knows the routine even when your brain has checked out. Pour coffee, take orders, deliver plates, smile at customers who probably didn't tip enough. It took her 15 minutes to make it to his table. When she did, she froze. "You're kidding me," Nora said. "Good morning," Ethan said. "What are you doing here?" "Having breakfast. At Lou's." "You said it was on Mercer Street." Nora looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Then she glanced over her shoulder to make sure Lou wasn't watching and slid into the booth across from him. "Okay, seriously, what do you want?" "To talk. We talked last night in the elevator that tried to kill us." "I know. And now I need to talk to you again." "About what?" Ethan pulled out his phone and opened the file his assistant had sent. He turned the screen so Nora could see it. "About this," he said. "About Bennett Holdings, LLC. About your mother." The color drained from Nora's face. She stared at the screen for a long moment, not touching the phone, not moving. Then she looked up at him with something that might have been fear or might have been anger. "Where did you get this?" she asked quietly. "Property records. They're public." "Why were you looking?" "Because something you said last night didn't make sense. You said your family had lived in Green Ridge for 3 generations, but you're paying rent to Victor Hale, who treats you like you're disposable. I wanted to know why." Nora's jaw tightened. "And what exactly do you think you found?" "I think your mother used to own that building," Ethan said. "I think she lost it in 1994 under circumstances that involved lawsuits and sealed settlements. And I think Victor Hale's father was on the other side of those lawsuits." Nora didn't confirm or deny. She just sat there, her hands flat on the table, her breathing carefully controlled. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said finally. "Then tell me I'm wrong." "You're wrong." "Nora, I have to get back to work." She started to slide out of the booth, but Ethan reached across the table, not touching her, just enough to make her stop. "Please," he said. "I'm not trying to cause problems. I'm trying to understand what happened." "Why? So you can feel better about tearing down my building?" "No, so I can figure out what Victor Hale is hiding." That got her attention. She looked at him properly, searching his face for something, lies maybe, or ulterior motives. "What makes you think he's hiding anything?" she asked. "Because people don't seal court settlements unless there's something they don't want anyone to see." Nora's expression shifted. Some of the defensiveness melted into something that looked like exhaustion. "You really want to know?" she said. "Yes." She glanced over her shoulder again. Lou was still yelling about hash browns. The other waitress was handling the counter. No one was paying attention to them. "Not here," Nora said. "My break's at 10. There's a park 2 blocks east. Meet me there." Then she was gone, back to pouring coffee and delivering plates like the last 5 minutes hadn't happened. Ethan finished his eggs without tasting them, left cash on the table that was probably double what the meal cost, and walked out into the morning. The park was barely worth the name. A half-acre of brown grass and dying trees, a broken playground, a few benches that had been tagged so many times the graffiti had graffiti. But it was empty, which was probably the point. Ethan sat on the least damaged bench and waited. Nora showed up at 10:15, still in her uniform, carrying 2 coffees from the diner. She handed him one without speaking and sat down on the other end of the bench, as far from him as the space allowed. "You didn't have to buy me coffee," Ethan said. "It's from the pot we're about to throw out anyway. Don't get excited." He tried it. She was right. It tasted like it had been brewed sometime during the previous administration. They sat in silence for a minute, watching a dog walker struggle with 3 leashes and a trash bag. "My grandmother bought into Green Ridge in 1952, Nora said finally. She and 5 other families. It was supposed to be this cooperative thing. Everyone owned a share. Everyone had a say in how the building was run. That's unusual." It was the 50s. Lots of things were unusual. Ethan didn't argue. "It worked for a while," Nora continued. "Decades, actually. But people died. Families moved away. By the 80s, there were only 2 families left with ownership stakes. Mine and the Hales. Victor's family. His father, Thomas Hale. He wanted to sell the building to a developer. My mom didn't. They fought about it for years. And then in 1993, my mom discovered that Thomas had been forging documents, faking board meeting minutes, making it look like decisions had been made that never actually happened. What kind of decisions? The kind that would give him controlling interest in the building, the kind that would let him force a sale without my mother's consent. Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. She sued him. She tried. But Thomas had money. He hired lawyers, dragged it out. And my mom was raising me alone and working 2 jobs, and she couldn't afford to keep fighting. So in 1994, she took a settlement, signed away her ownership stake, and the building went to Hale Property Management. What was in the settlement? $50,000 and a promise that she could keep living in her apartment as long as she wanted, rent-controlled, protected. And did she? For a while. Until Thomas died in 2009. Then Victor took over, and suddenly the rent control didn't apply anymore. Suddenly, there were fees and fines and new rules. My mom fought him for years, but she was sick by then. Cancer. She didn't have the energy. Nora's voice had gone flat, the way people's voices go when they're talking about things that still hurt, but they've told the story enough times that they've learned to keep the emotion locked down. "She died 3 years ago," Nora said, "and I inherited her apartment and her debts and her fight with Victor Hale. He's been targeting you ever since. He wants me gone. He wants everyone from the old days gone so he can sell the building to people like you and pretend the last 70 years never happened." Ethan set down his coffee. It was too bitter to drink anyway. "Did your mother keep any of the documents?" he asked. "From the lawsuit? From the original ownership agreement?" "Some. They're in a box in my closet." "Why?" "Because if Thomas Hale committed fraud, the settlement might not be valid. And if the settlement's not valid, your mother's ownership stake might still exist." Nora laughed, and it was the saddest sound Ethan had heard in years. "My mother's dead," she said. "Even if she still technically owned part of the building, what good does that do me?" "Depends on what the original ownership documents say. If the shares were inheritable, you might have a claim." "A claim to what? A building that's falling apart and about to be sold?" "A claim to a voice, a say in what happens. Leverage." Nora turned to look at him fully for the first time since she'd sat down. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Doing what?" "This, digging into my family's history, trying to help. You don't know me. And even if you did, I'm standing in the way of your investment." Ethan thought about that, thought about the real answer, which was complicated and messy and had something to do with the way Nora had looked at him in that elevator, and told him the truth about what his business did to people, but that wasn't the answer he gave. "Your mother saved my life," he said. Nora blinked. "What?" "Marion Bennett, your mother. In 1998, I was 15. There was a fire at my school. Old building, faulty wiring, the whole place went up like kindling. I was in the chemistry lab when it started, got trapped when the ceiling collapsed." He could still remember it. The smoke, the heat, the sound of wood splintering. "Your mother was a nurse there," Ethan continued. "She came back into the building when everyone else was evacuating, found me under a table, dragged me out." Nora's mouth had fallen open. "You're lying." "I'm not." "My mom never mentioned—" She probably didn't remember. There were a dozen kids pulled out of that fire. I was just one of them, but I remember her. I remember her telling me to stay calm. I remember her voice. Nora stared at him like he'd just told her the sky was green. "That's not possible," she said. "It is. I didn't make the connection until last night, when I saw her name in the property records. But I looked it up this morning, checked the news archives from 1998. There was a photo. Marion Bennett, school nurse, credited with rescuing multiple students." He pulled out his phone again and showed her the article. It was scanned from microfilm, grainy and yellowed with age, but the headline was clear. "Local nurse hailed as hero after school fire." And there was a photo. A woman in her 30s, dark hair, tired eyes. Nora's mother. Nora took the phone with shaking hands and stared at the screen. "I didn't know," she whispered. "How could you? You were probably 8 years old." "I was 7. My mom came home that night with burns on her arms. She told me she'd been at work. She didn't say anything about a fire." "That sounds like her, from what I remember." Nora handed back the phone like it might burn her too. "So this is guilt?" she said. "You're helping me because you feel like you owe her?" "Maybe. Partly. But also because what Victor Hale is doing is wrong, and I'm in a position to do something about it." "By buying the building and evicting everyone anyway? By making sure the truth comes out first?" Nora stood up, paced 3 steps away, then back. She looked like she wanted to scream or cry or throw something, and she was holding it all in through sheer force of will. "I don't have time for this," she said. "I have to be back at work in 10 minutes. I have to pick up Lily at 3. I have to—" "Nora." "What?" "Let me help." "Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm the only one offering." That stopped her. She stood there in the middle of the ugly park with her ugly coffee, and Ethan saw the exact moment she made the decision. "Okay," she said, "but if you screw me over, I will make your life hell." "Fair enough." She checked her watch. "I have to go, but meet me tonight, 7 o'clock, my apartment. Bring a lawyer if you have one." "I have several." "Of course you do." She started walking back toward the diner, then stopped and turned around. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for telling me about my mom." Then she was gone, and Ethan was alone in the park with coffee he couldn't drink, and a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. He spent the rest of the day canceling meetings and making phone calls. First to his head attorney, a woman named Patricia, who'd been with his company for a decade and had seen everything. "I need you to look into a property fraud case from 1994, Ethan said. "And I need you to do it quietly." "How quietly?" "Don't tell anyone, not the board, not the other partners, just you." Patricia was silent for a moment. "Ethan, what are you getting into?" "I'm not sure yet, but I need someone I can trust." "You have me. Send over what you've got." He emailed her everything: the property records, the lawsuit filings, the news article about his mother, all of it. Then he called his mother. "Can you keep Emma tonight?" he asked. "I have something I need to take care of." "Another meeting?" "Something like that." His mother sighed. "You're working too much." "I know." "Emma misses you." "I know." "Then maybe you should—" "Mom, please, just tonight. I promise I'll do better." Another sigh. "Fine, but you're taking her to the park this weekend. No excuses." "Deal." He hung up before she could give him the rest of the lecture he probably deserved. At 6:30, Patricia called back. "You've stepped in something messy," she said without preamble. "Tell me." The original ownership structure for Greenridge Towers was a cooperative trust. 6 families bought in with equal shares. The trust documents specified that shares were inheritable and could only be sold with unanimous consent of all shareholders. Okay. Thomas Hale forged documents claiming 2 of the families had sold their shares to him. He also forged board meeting minutes authorizing him to make decisions on behalf of the trust. When Marion Bennett challenged him, he tied her up in court until she ran out of money. So the fraud definitely happened. Definitely. But here's where it gets interesting. The settlement Marion signed in 1994 only addressed her personal claims. It didn't dissolve the trust. It didn't transfer her shares. It just paid her to stop fighting. Ethan sat up. So legally, she still owned her stake? Technically, yes. But without documentation proving it, and with the building having changed hands multiple times since then, it would be almost impossible to enforce. Almost? Unless we can find the original trust documents. If those exist, and if they show Marion's shares were never legally transferred, we might have a case. What are the odds? Of finding 70-year-old legal documents? Low, but not 0. Ethan checked the time, 10 minutes to 7. Thanks, Patricia. I'll be in touch. Ethan, whatever you're planning, be careful. People who commit fraud don't usually just accept being caught. I know. He hung up and headed for Green Ridge Towers. The elevator was still broken. Ethan took the stairs to the 14th floor, and by the time he reached Nora's door, his knee was screaming, and he was reconsidering every life choice that had led him to this moment. He knocked. Nora opened the door, holding Lily, who was chewing on a rubber giraffe and drooling on Nora's shoulder. You look terrible, Nora said. Stairs. Right, come in. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, probably. A living room barely big enough for a couch and a coffee table. The kitchen was a galley with outdated appliances and counters that had been scrubbed so many times the pattern was wearing off. But it was clean, tidy. There were photos on the walls. Nora with a woman who had to be her sister, Nora with her mother, a black and white picture of an older woman Ethan assumed was her grandmother. 3 generations. Sit, Nora said, gesturing to the couch. I'll get the box. She disappeared into the bedroom with Lily. Ethan could hear her talking to the baby in a soft voice, could hear Lily giggling. A minute later, Nora came back alone, carrying a cardboard box that looked like it had survived a flood. She set it on the coffee table. This is everything my mom kept, Nora said. I haven't looked through most of it. After she died, I just packed it up. Ethan opened the box carefully. Inside were file folders, photographs, newspaper clippings, old bills. He started sorting through them, looking for anything legal. Nora sat next to him, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something cheap and floral. What exactly are we looking for? She asked. Trust documents. The original agreement from when your grandmother bought into the building. Anything that proves your family's ownership stake. They went through the box in silence. Most of it was junk. Letters from bill collectors, medical records, photos of people Ethan didn't recognize. Then, near the bottom, Nora pulled out a manila envelope that was sealed with tape so old it was yellow. What's this? She said. Ethan took it. The envelope was addressed to Marion Bennett, but there was no return address and no postmark, like it had been hand-delivered. He broke the seal and pulled out the contents. Legal documents. Old ones. The paper was thick and starting to yellow at the edges. He read the first page and his heart started beating faster. What is it? Nora asked. It's the trust, Ethan said quietly. The original cooperative trust for Green Ridge Towers, with all 6 signatures. He flipped through the pages, checking the dates, the language, the notarization. It was all there. Your grandmother owned 16% of the building, Ethan said. Her shares passed to your mother when she died, and they should have passed to you when your mother died. Nora stared at him. Are you saying I own part of Green Ridge? I'm saying you might. We'd need to verify this with the county records, make sure it was never invalidated. But if this document is legitimate, and if your mother's shares were never legally transferred, then yes, you own 16% of the building. Nora grabbed the document out of his hands and read it herself, her eyes moving rapidly over the dense legal language. This doesn't make sense, she said. My mom never said anything, never mentioned this. She probably didn't know. Or if she did, she assumed the settlement invalidated it. But it didn't? No. The settlement was about her claims of fraud. It didn't address the trust. Nora set down the papers like they might explode. She looked pale. "What do I do?" she asked. "We file a claim. We present this to the county and prove your ownership. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but when he saw it was Patricia, he picked up. "I found something," Patricia said. She sounded shaken. "You need to hear this." "What is it?" "I pulled the recent financial records for Greenridge Towers. Victor Hale has been siphoning money from the building for years. Fake maintenance fees, inflated contractor invoices. He's stolen close to $2 million. Ethan felt cold. "Can you prove it?" "I can show the pattern, but we'd need the original invoices to prove fraud. And those are probably in Victor's office." "Then we get them." "Ethan, we get them. Tonight." Nora was staring at him. "What's happening?" Ethan hung up and turned to her. "Victor Hale has been stealing from the building," he said. "If we can prove it, we can have him removed. Maybe arrested." "How do we prove it?" "We break into his office and get the records." Nora's eyes went wide. "That's insane." "It's the only way. It's illegal." "So is fraud." They stared at each other. Somewhere in the bedroom, Lily started crying. Nora didn't move. "If we do this," she said quietly, "there's no going back." "I know." "Victor will come after us." "Let him." Nora stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city lights stretching to the horizon. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." Victor Hale's office was on the ground floor, tucked behind the lobby in a corner that probably used to be a maintenance closet. Nora had been past it 1,000 times, but never inside. The door was always locked, and Victor made it clear that tenants weren't welcome unless they had an appointment and a checkbook. "He usually leaves around 8, Nora said as they descended the stairs. She'd left Lily with her sister, who'd asked exactly 0 questions when Nora showed up at her door, looking like she was about to commit a felony. Sometimes later, if he's meeting with contractors. Contractors he's probably overcharging the building for, Ethan said. "Yeah, that sounds about right." They reached the lobby and Nora pulled Ethan behind the stairwell door, peering through the gap. The lights were still on in Victor's office. Through the frosted glass, she could see his silhouette moving around. "He's still there," she whispered. "Then we wait." They waited, pressed against the wall in the stairwell that smelled like mildew and old cigarettes, listening to the building settle around them. Someone on the 3rd floor was playing music too loud. Someone else was yelling in Spanish about burned rice. Normal sounds. Normal. The kind of sounds that meant people were living their lives, unaware that 2 idiots were hiding in the dark, planning to break into their property manager's office. Nora's phone buzzed. A text from her sister. "Lily's asleep. You good?" She typed back "Yeah, be back soon." Another lie to add to the collection she'd been building all day. "You okay?" Ethan asked quietly. "Fantastic. I break into offices all the time." "We're not breaking in. We're investigating." "That's what they'll put on my arrest record." She was investigating. Ethan almost smiled. "We're not going to get arrested. You sound very confident for someone who's about to commit a crime." "It's only a crime if we get caught. That's not how the law works." "I'm aware." The office light went out. Nora's breath caught. She pressed closer to the door, watching as Victor emerged from his office, locking it behind him. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested he'd been athletic once before settling into middle age. Dark hair going gray at the temples. Expensive suit that didn't match the building he managed. He crossed the lobby without looking around and pushed through the front entrance into the night. They waited another 2 minutes to make sure he wasn't coming back. "Okay," Ethan said. "Now we move." They stepped out of the stairwell. The lobby was empty, the security camera still hanging uselessly from its wires. Nora led the way to Victor's office, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. The door was locked, obviously. "You know how to pick a lock?" Nora asked. "No, do you?" "Why would I know how to pick a lock?" "I don't know. You seem resourceful." "I'm a waitress, not a criminal." Ethan pulled out his phone and made a call. "Patricia, I need you to walk me through picking a door lock." There was a pause. Then Patricia's voice, distant but audible. I'm sorry, what? A door lock. How do I pick one? Ethan, I'm a lawyer, not a locksmith. But you know things. I know you're about to do something incredibly stupid. Probably. So help me do it smart. Another pause. Then Patricia sighed, the sigh of someone who'd given up trying to save Ethan from himself. You need a tension wrench and a pick. Do you have those? Ethan looked at Nora. Nora looked back at him and shrugged. Hold on, she said. She ran back up the stairs to her apartment, taking them two at a time despite her exhausted legs screaming in protest. She grabbed bobby pins from the bathroom counter and a flathead screwdriver from the kitchen drawer and ran back down. Will these work? She asked, shoving them at Ethan. He relayed the question to Patricia, who walked them through the process with the kind of patience that suggested she'd done this before and Nora really didn't want to know why. It took 7 minutes and 3 broken bobby pins, but eventually something clicked and the door swung open. They stepped inside and Nora closed the door behind them. Victor's office was exactly what she'd expected. Cheap furniture pretending to be expensive, a desk covered in papers and coffee rings, filing cabinets against one wall, a computer that looked like it was from 2015, and photographs everywhere. Victor shaking hands with contractors, Victor at some awards ceremony, Victor standing in front of buildings with sold signs. Charming, Ethan muttered. He's very proud of himself. I can see that. Ethan went to the filing cabinets. Nora moved to the desk, rifling through the papers. Most of it was boring: rent ledgers, maintenance requests, letters from tenants complaining about things that would never get fixed. Then she found the file folder. It was tucked under a stack of invoices and it had her name on it. Nora Bennett. Unit 1407. Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside were copies of every violation notice Victor had ever sent her, every fine he'd tried to impose, every threat of eviction. But there were also things she'd never seen before. Notes in Victor's handwriting about her schedule, her job, her sister. He'd been tracking her, documenting her movements, building a case to force her out. Ethan, she said quietly. He looked up from the filing cabinet. What is it? She held up the folder. He's been stalking me. Ethan crossed the room in 3 strides and took the folder. His jaw tightened as he read through it. This is harassment, he said. This is my life. Ethan pulled out his phone and started photographing every page in the folder. We're keeping this, all of it. While he worked, Nora went back to searching the desk. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of takeout menus, she found another folder. This one was labeled Maintenance Contractors. She opened it and her breath stopped. Invoices, dozens of them, for work that had supposedly been done on the building over the last 3 years. New boilers, roof repairs, plumbing replacements. The amounts were staggering, $50,000 here, $70,000 there, over $2 million total. But Nora lived in this building. She knew the roof still leaked, knew the boiler broke down every winter, knew the plumbing was held together with rust and prayer. None of this work had actually been done. Ethan, she said again, and her voice came out strangled. He was beside her instantly, looked over her shoulder at the invoices. These are fake, he said. I know. All of them? Most of them. Maybe all. I don't know. But I know this building hasn't seen $2 million in repairs. Ethan started photographing again, faster now. His hands were steady, but Nora could see the tension in his shoulders. We need the originals, he said. Photos might not be enough in court. Then we take them. If he notices they're gone, he's going to notice either way. Once we file our claim, he'll know someone's been digging. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. He grabbed the entire folder and tucked it under his arm. Nora went back to searching. In the filing cabinet, under M for miscellaneous, she found a locked metal box. There's a locked box, she called out. Ethan came over. The box was small, maybe the size of a shoebox, with a combination lock. Can Patricia help with this too? Nora asked. Not unless she knows the combination. Nora studied the lock. 3 digits. Could be anything. She tried Victor's office number, 407. Nothing. Tried the building address, 1850. Nothing. What year was the building built? Ethan asked. 1952. He tried it. The lock clicked open. Inside the box were more documents, older ones. Nora pulled them out carefully, spreading them on the desk. Property deeds, transfer agreements, And there, near the bottom, a document that made her blood run cold. It was a quit-claim deed, dated 1994, transferring Marion Bennett's ownership stake in Greenridge Towers to Thomas Hale. It had her mother's signature on it, except Nora knew her mother's signature, had seen it on birthday cards and school permission slips, and the last check she'd written before she died. This wasn't it. This was close, but the loops were wrong. The slant was wrong. "This is forged," Nora said. Ethan took the document and examined it under the desk lamp. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. That's not my mother's handwriting." "Then this proves it. This proves Thomas Hale forged the transfer. Your mother never actually gave up her shares." Nora felt something crack open in her chest. Relief, maybe. Or vindication. Or the beginning of something that felt like hope, but she was too scared to name. "We take this too," she said. Ethan was already folding it, sliding it into the folder with the invoices. Then they heard footsteps in the lobby. They both froze. Ethan killed the desk lamp and they stood in the dark, barely breathing, listening to someone approach the office door. A key scraped in the lock. Victor was back. Ethan grabbed Nora's wrist and pulled her toward the corner behind the filing cabinet. They pressed into the narrow space just as the door opened and the lights came on. Victor walked in, talking on his phone. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying. "I want her out by the end of the month. Find a violation. Make one up if you have to." A pause. "Bennett, Unit 1407. She's been a problem for years and I'm done waiting." Nora's hands curled into fists. Ethan's grip on her wrist tightened, a silent warning not to move. Victor crossed to his desk. Nora could see him through the gap between the cabinets, close enough to touch. He was still on the phone, still talking. "The building's selling next month. I need everyone from the old agreements gone before the new owners take over. Clean slate. No complications." He paused, listening. "I don't care how you do it. Just do it." He hung up, set his phone on the desk, started shuffling through papers. Then he stopped. Nora watched as Victor's expression changed. Confusion first, then suspicion. He was looking at his desk, at the open drawer, at the space where the contractor folder had been. "What the hell?" he muttered. He moved to the filing cabinet, opened the drawer marked M, pulled out the lockbox. It was still unlocked. Victor's face went white, then red. "No," he said. "No, no, no." He grabbed his phone and dialed. Someone answered on the first ring. "We have a problem," Victor said. His voice had gone tight, controlled, dangerous. "Someone's been in my office. The documents are gone." A muffled response. "I don't know who, but they have everything. The invoices, the transfer deed, all of it." Another response. Victor's eyes swept the office, and for a terrible moment Nora thought he was going to see them. But his gaze passed over the filing cabinet and landed on the desk. "It's that woman," he said. "It has to be. Bennett? She's been asking questions. She must have—" He stopped, listened. "Fine. We do it tonight. Burn the apartment. Make it look like an accident. Faulty wiring. Whatever. Just make sure she's not in it." Nora's heart stopped. "And if she is in it?" Victor asked. Then he listened and said, "Yeah, okay. Just get it done." He hung up, stood there for a moment, breathing hard. Then he grabbed his keys and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The second he was gone, Nora tried to move, but her legs wouldn't work. She was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. "He's going to burn my apartment," she whispered. "He's going to kill me." "No, he's not." Ethan pulled out his phone. "We're calling the police." "And tell them what? That we broke into Victor's office and overheard him planning arson? They'll arrest us." "Then we call the fire department. Warn them." "And say what? That there might be a fire? They won't come for a maybe." Ethan looked at her, and Nora saw her own panic reflected in his eyes. "We go to your apartment," he said. We get there first. We catch them in the act." "That's insane." "You have a better idea?" She didn't. They ran. Up the stairs, 14 floors, Nora's lungs screaming and her legs threatening to give out. Behind them, somewhere, Victor was making his own way through the building. Ahead of them, someone was already moving toward her apartment with gasoline or matches or whatever tools you use to make a fire look accidental. They reached the 14th floor and Nora fumbled for her keys. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped them twice before she got the door open. The apartment was dark, silent, too silent. "Something's wrong," Nora said. Ethan pushed past her, turning on lights. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. He checked the bedroom while Nora stood frozen in the doorway. "There's no one here," he called out. "Then why did he—" The smell hit her. Gasoline. Faint but unmistakable. "Ethan," she said. He was already moving, following his nose to the kitchen. To the stove. Someone had left the gas on, all 4 burners hissing quietly, filling the apartment with invisible death. And on the counter, propped against the toaster, was a candle. Lit. It had maybe 2 inches of wax left before the flame would reach the base and tip over onto the counter, where someone had thoughtfully left a stack of newspapers soaked in what smelled like lighter fluid. "Get out," Ethan said. "Now." But Nora was already moving. She grabbed a dish towel, wrapped it around her hand, and grabbed the candle, threw it into the sink and turned on the water, ran to the stove and twisted all the knobs to off. The hissing stopped. Ethan opened windows, letting in cold air that had never felt so good. They stood there, gasping, staring at what had almost been Nora's grave. "We need to leave," Ethan said. "Right now." Before they realized it didn't work. "I need to get my things. There's no time. The trust documents, the photos. I can't just—" "Nora, they tried to kill you. We leave now, or we don't leave at all." But Nora was already in the bedroom, grabbing the cardboard box with her mother's papers, grabbing the framed photo of her grandmother, grabbing Lily's favorite stuffed elephant because her sister would never forgive her if something happened to it. Ethan helped her carry it all. They made it to the door just as someone started pounding on it from the outside. "Open up!" a man's voice shouted. Not Victor, someone else. "Fire inspection! Open up now!" Nora looked at Ethan. Ethan looked back. "The window," he said. "We're on the 14th floor. The fire escape. It's rusted through. It'll never hold us." "It'll hold us better than staying here will." More pounding. "I said open up!" They ran to the bedroom window. Ethan forced it open. It stuck, swollen with years of paint and humidity, and looked out at the fire escape. It was exactly as bad as Nora had said. Rusted metal clinging to brick by sheer stubborn will. "You first," Ethan said. "If that thing collapses, it won't. You don't know that. Nora, go." She went, climbed out onto the fire escape with the box of documents clutched to her chest. The metal groaned under her weight, but held. Ethan passed her the framed photo and the stuffed elephant, then climbed out after her. Behind them, the apartment door crashed open. "Go, go, go," Ethan hissed. They went down. 1 flight, 2. The fire escape swaying with every step, bolts popping loose from the brick. Nora tried not to look down at the alley 13 stories below. Above them, someone stuck their head out the window. "They're on the fire escape," the man yelled. Footsteps on metal. Someone else was coming down after them. Nora moved faster, half climbing, half falling down the ladder. Her foot slipped on the wet metal, and she nearly dropped the box, but Ethan caught her, steadied her, kept moving. They were on the 10th floor when the fire escape gave its first real warning, a metallic shriek that sounded like the whole structure was about to tear away from the building. "Keep going," Ethan said. "It's going to collapse." "Then we need to be on the ground when it does." 8th floor, 7th, Nora's arms were screaming from carrying the box. Her legs were jelly. She could hear their pursuer getting closer, heavy boots on metal, someone bigger and faster than they were. 6th floor, 5th. The fire escape lurched sideways. One of the support brackets tore completely away from the brick, and suddenly they were hanging at a 15-degree angle over nothing. Nora screamed. Ethan grabbed the railing with both hands. "Keep moving!" They scrambled down the tilting ladder. 4th floor, 3rd. Behind them, their pursuer had stopped, probably realizing that adding his weight to a collapsing structure was a bad idea. 2nd floor. 1st. The ladder ended 10 feet above the alley. There was supposed to be a retractable section, but it was rusted in place. "Jump," Ethan said. "Are you serious? You have a better idea?" She didn't. She handed him the box and the photo and the elephant, and she jumped. Hit the pavement hard. Her ankle twisted and pain shot up her leg, but nothing broke. Ethan dropped the box down to her, then the rest, then jumped himself. Landed better than she had, probably because he hadn't been on his feet for 16 hours straight before starting this nightmare. They grabbed everything and ran. Out of the alley, onto the street. Nora had no idea where they were going, just away. Away from the building and Victor and the man who'd chased them and the apartment that had almost become her funeral pyre. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, she looked. 3 texts from her sister. "Where are you?" "Nora, seriously, where are you?" "There's something happening at your building. Fire trucks. Are you okay?" Nora stopped running, turned around. 3 blocks away, Green Ridge Towers was lit up like a Christmas tree, red and blue lights everywhere. Fire trucks, police cars, an ambulance. "They set it anyway," she said numbly. "They set the fire anyway." Ethan followed her gaze. "Or someone else reported the gas leak. Either way, your home is standing. Look." He was right. There was smoke. She could see it now, but it was coming from the lower floors. The building wasn't engulfed. Whatever fire there was, it was contained. Her phone rang. Her sister. Nora answered. "I'm okay." "Where are you? What happened?" "I can't explain right now." "Is Lily okay?" "She's fine. She's asleep." "Nora, what the hell is going on?" "I'll tell you later. Just stay where you are. Don't go near the building." She hung up before her sister could argue. A block away, she watched firefighters moving in and out of Green Ridge Towers. Watched residents being evacuated, standing on the sidewalk in their pajamas, watching their homes fill with smoke. "This is my fault," Nora said. "This is Victor's fault. I should have just left. Should have just moved when he started raising the rent. Should have—" "Nora." She looked at him. "This is not your fault," Ethan said firmly. "Victor Hale tried to burn down a building full of people to cover up his crimes. That's on him, not you." Nora wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that none of this was her responsibility. But she kept seeing those families on the sidewalk, kept thinking about how Victor had escalated because of her, because she'd started asking questions. Her phone buzzed again. Not her sister this time, a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Nora Bennett?" a woman's voice asked. "Who is this?" "My name is Helen Carver. I was a nurse at Lincoln High School in 1998. I'm calling because I saw you today. At the diner, and I recognized you." Nora's throat went tight. "Recognized me how?" "You look just like your mother, Marion. We worked together for 15 years. The world tilted sideways. "I have something that belongs to you," Helen continued. "Something Marion gave me before she died. She made me promise to give it to you when the time was right. I think that time is now." Nora couldn't speak, couldn't process. Behind her, Green Ridge Towers was still burning. In front of her, Ethan was watching with concern. "Can you meet me?" Helen asked. "Tonight? I know it's late, but I saw the news about the fire, and I think you need to see this." "What is it?" "A letter and a key. Marion said you'd know what to do with them when you were ready." Nora closed her eyes, opened them. "Where?" she asked. Helen Carver lived in a row house in Queens, the kind of place that had probably looked exactly the same since 1975. White siding, black shutters, a porch light that buzzed with dying insects. Ethan pulled his car to the curb and killed the engine. "You sure about this?" he asked. Nora stared at the house. Through the front window, she could see warm light, a living room with old furniture, someone moving around inside. "No," she said, "but I'm doing it anyway." They got out. Nora was still carrying the box of documents, still clutching her grandmother's photo like it was a life raft. Her ankle throbbed where she'd twisted it jumping from the fire escape. Her uniform was torn and covered in rust stains. She looked like she'd been through a war. She felt like it too. Helen answered on the first knock. She was older than Nora had expected, maybe 70, with white hair pulled back in a bun and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She wore a cardigan that had seen better decades and slippers shaped like cats. "Nora?" she asked. "Yes." Helen's face softened. "You really do look just like her. Come in, come in." They followed her inside. The house smelled like tea and old books. Crocheted blankets covered every surface. Photographs lined the walls, Helen with people Nora didn't recognize. Helen in a younger version of herself wearing scrubs. Helen holding a baby who was probably a grandchild by now. "Sit," Helen said, gesturing to a couch that had probably been purchased during the Carter administration. "Can I get you anything? Tea? Water?" "We're fine," Ethan said. Helen sat across from them in an armchair that matched the couch. She looked at Nora with eyes that were sharp despite their age. "Your mother was my best friend," Helen said. "Did you know that?" Nora shook her head. "She never mentioned you." "I'm not surprised. After what happened with the building, after the lawsuit, Marion pulled away from everyone. She was ashamed, I think. Felt like she'd failed." "She didn't fail," Nora said automatically, though she wasn't sure she believed it. "I know that. You know that. But Marion, she was hard on herself. Always had been." Helen reached for something on the side table. A manila envelope, yellowed with age. "She came to see me 2 weeks before she died. I didn't know it would be the last time. She looked so tired. But she gave me this and made me promise to hold on to it until you needed it." "How were you supposed to know when I needed it?" "She said I'd know. That you'd look like her and you'd be fighting the same fight she fought. And when I saw you today at the diner, I knew." Helen held out the envelope. "This is yours." Nora took it with shaking hands. The envelope was sealed, her name written across the front in her mother's handwriting. The real handwriting, not the forgery Victor had kept in his locked box. She broke the seal and pulled out the contents. A letter, handwritten on lined paper, the ink slightly faded, and a key. Small brass, the kind that might open a safe deposit box. Nora unfolded the letter. Her mother's words written 3 years ago when she'd known she was dying but hadn't told Nora how close the end really was. "My darling Nora," it began, and Nora's eyes immediately filled with tears. "If you're reading this, it means Helen kept her promise and you've found your way to the truth. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you myself. I'm sorry for so many things, but mostly I'm sorry that I let them take what was ours without fighting harder. When your grandmother died, she left me her shares in Greenridge Towers, 1/6 of the building. It was supposed to be our legacy, our security, our home. But Thomas Hale wanted to sell, and I wouldn't agree. So he forged documents, made it look like I'd signed away my rights. By the time I discovered what he'd done, I was drowning in legal fees and running out of time and money. I took the settlement because I was tired, because I was scared, because I thought it was the only way to keep a roof over our heads. But I was wrong. The settlement only covered my fraud claims. It didn't transfer my shares. I still owned 1/6 of that building when I died, which means you own it now. The key in this envelope opens a safe deposit box at First National Bank, branch 447, box number 1408. Inside you'll find the original trust documents, certified copies of the ownership agreements, and evidence of Thomas Hale's fraud. Everything you need to prove your claim. I know you're angry with me for not fighting harder. I'm angry with myself, but maybe you can finish what I started. Maybe you can take back what's ours. I love you. I'm so proud of you. And I'm sorry I won't be there to see you win, Mom." Nora couldn't see the words anymore through the tears. She folded the letter carefully and held it against her chest, trying to breathe through the grief that was threatening to choke her. Ethan put a hand on her shoulder, didn't say anything, just sat there, solid and present. Helen was crying too, quietly, into a tissue she'd pulled from her cardigan pocket. "She loved you so much," Helen said. "She talked about you all the time, how smart you were, how strong, how you worked so hard to take care of everyone else." "She never told me about the shares," Nora said, her voice breaking. "Never told me I owned part of the building. Why wouldn't she tell me?" "Because she was ashamed, because she thought she'd failed, because she wanted you to have a better life than fighting her battles." Helen leaned forward. "But Marion also knew you wouldn't let go once you found out the truth. That's why she left this for you, because she knew eventually you'd need it." Nora wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She looked at the key, small and ordinary, and somehow holding the weight of 3 generations. "The bank opens at 9, Ethan said quietly. "That's 10 hours from now. Which gives us time to figure out our next move." Nora laughed, and it came out harsh. "Our next move? We broke into Victor's office. We stole documents. We're probably wanted for arson because I guarantee he's going to blame the fire on us." "He can't. We were with Helen." We weren't with Helen when the fire started. We were in my apartment, where we stopped an arson attempt that Victor orchestrated. And how do we prove that? We can't exactly explain why we were there without admitting we broke into his office first. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone and called Patricia. I need you to do something, he said when she answered. And you're not going to like it. I already don't like it. What now? I need you to file an emergency injunction tonight, halting all ownership transfers for Green Ridge Towers pending investigation of fraud. Based on what evidence? Based on forged documents, fraudulent invoices, and attempted arson. Patricia was silent for a long moment. Ethan, do you know what you're asking me to do? Filing an emergency injunction requires evidence that will hold up in court. Not photographs, not hearsay, actual documentation. We have it. Original documents showing Thomas Hale forged ownership transfers. Invoices proving Victor Hale embezzled over $2 million. And tomorrow morning, we'll have the original trust documents from a safe deposit box proving Nora Bennett is a legal owner of the building. Who witnessed the forgery? No one. But we have a handwriting expert who can compare. That'll take weeks, maybe months. You need something now. Nora stood up, crossed to where Ethan was standing, took the phone from his hand. This is Nora Bennett, she said, and I'm filing a complaint right now with the police about the arson attempt. That'll give you something to hang the injunction on. You were there when it happened? Patricia asked. I was the target. Then we might have a shot. But Nora, if you file that complaint, you're putting yourself in Victor Hale's crosshairs. He'll come after you with everything he has. He already tried to burn me alive. I'm not sure what else he can do. Don't underestimate desperate people. I'm not. I'm just done being scared. She hung up and handed the phone back to Ethan. We're going to the police, she said. Right now. We're filing a report about the arson. And then we're going to that bank first thing in the morning and getting those documents. And then, Ethan asked, and then we're taking back my building. The police station was everything Nora had expected and worse. Fluorescent lights that made everyone look dead, plastic chairs bolted to the floor, a waiting area that smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Behind a thick glass partition, a cop who looked about 16 typed on a computer with 2 fingers. Nora walked up to the window. I need to file a report. The cop didn't look up. What kind of report? Attempted murder, arson, fraud. Take your pick. That got his attention. He looked at her properly, taking in her torn uniform and rust-stained hands and the box of documents she was clutching. Have a seat, he said. Someone will be with you. They sat. The clock on the wall said it was past midnight. Nora felt like she'd been awake for a month. A detective came out 20 minutes later. She was maybe 40, dark hair pulled back tight, wearing slacks and a blazer that had seen better days. She had the look of someone who'd heard every lie and seen every scam and wasn't impressed by much. Nora Bennett? She asked. That's me? I'm Detective Sarah Reeves. Come on back. They followed her into a small room with a table and 4 chairs and a mirror that was obviously one-way glass. Detective Reeves gestured for them to sit. So, she said, pulling out a notepad, talk to me about this attempted murder. Nora told her everything, the elevator, the investigation, breaking into Victor's office, which she glossed over as obtaining evidence, the overheard phone call, the gas left on in her apartment, the candle, the fire escape, the fire. She didn't mention the letter from her mother or the safe deposit box. Some things weren't the police's business yet. Detective Reeves wrote it all down, her expression neutral. When Nora finished, Reeves looked at Ethan. And you were with her for all of this? Most of it, Ethan said. Not the elevator, but everything after. Why? Because my company is buying Green Ridge Towers, and I wanted to know what we were actually purchasing. And what you discovered was fraud. Extensive fraud, yes. Reeves tapped her pen against the notepad. You got proof of any of this? Ethan pulled out his phone and showed her the photographs he'd taken in Victor's office. The fake invoices. The forged transfer deed. Nora's file with all of Victor's notes about her schedule and movements. Reeves studied each image carefully. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. This is serious, she said. I know, Nora said. I mean, if this is legitimate, we're talking wire fraud, embezzlement, attempted murder. This isn't some landlord-tenant dispute. I know. Reeves stood up. Wait here. She left, taking Ethan's phone with her. They sat in silence for 10 minutes. 15. Nora's leg bounced with nervous energy. Ethan looked calm, but she could see the tension in his jaw. When Reeves came back, she had another detective with her. Older guy, gray hair, the kind of cop who'd probably been doing this since before Nora was born. This is Detective Morris, Reeves said. He works white-collar crime. He's going to want to hear your story, too. So Nora told it again. Morris asked more questions this time, wanted specifics about the invoices, about the contractor names, about exactly what Victor had said on the phone. You're sure he said burn the apartment? Morris asked. Yes. And make it look like an accident? Yes. Those exact words? I know what I heard. Morris exchanged a look with Reeves. We're going to need to verify some things, but if what you're saying is true, we've got enough to bring Victor Hale in for questioning. What about the fire? Nora asked. Is anyone investigating that? Fire marshal's already on it. If it was arson, they'll find evidence. And if they don't? Then it's a lot harder to prove intent. Nora felt something sink in her chest. So Victor might get away with it. I didn't say that. I said it's harder to prove, but we've got the invoices, we've got the forged documents, we've got his notes about you. Even if the arson doesn't stick, we can build a case on the fraud. It wasn't enough. Nora wanted Victor in handcuffs for trying to kill her, not just for stealing money, but she also knew that justice didn't always look the way you wanted it to. What happens now? Ethan asked. Now you go home, Reeves said. Get some sleep. Come back tomorrow morning and we'll take official statements. In the meantime, we're going to start pulling records on Hale Property Management. See what else we can find. And Victor? We'll pick him up tonight if we can find him. But these guys tend to run when they know they're caught, so no promises. They left the station at 2 in the morning. The city was quieter now, just the sound of distant sirens and the occasional car passing. Nora felt hollowed out, empty. You need a place to stay tonight, Ethan said. I'll go to my sister's. She has room? She has a couch. Ethan hesitated. I have a guest room. It's clean. It's quiet. Emma would be asleep, so you wouldn't have to make small talk. Nora looked at him. Why are you doing all this? I told you, your mother saved my life. That was 30 years ago. You don't owe her anything. Maybe not, but I want to help anyway. There was something in his voice that made Nora believe him. Something honest and tired and maybe a little broken, like he needed this as much as she did. Okay, she said, but just for tonight. Ethan's house was in a neighborhood that made Nora feel like she'd crossed into another country. Wide streets, big yards, houses that could probably fit 3 of her apartment inside them. His was set back from the road, all dark wood and modern lines, with a driveway that could hold 6 cars. You live here alone? Nora asked as they pulled in. Me and Emma, and my mother, sometimes, when she stays over. It's huge. It's too big. My wife picked it out. She wanted space for Emma to grow up, space for the family she thought we'd have. He killed the engine. Now it's just space. They went inside. The house was exactly what Nora had expected. Expensive furniture, art on the walls, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But it was also cold, sterile, like no one actually lived there. Guest room's upstairs, Ethan said. Second door on the right. There's a bathroom attached. Towels in the closet. Help yourself to anything. Thank you. He nodded and started to walk away, then stopped. Nora? Yeah? You did the right thing, tonight, filing the report, standing up to Victor. Doesn't feel like it. It will. Eventually. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that all of this would matter, that her mother's legacy wouldn't just disappear into legal battles and insurance claims and Victor Hale's lawyers. But belief was hard when you were this tired. She went upstairs. The guest room was nice. Too nice. White bedding that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A mattress that felt like sleeping on a cloud. She set down the box of documents and her grandmother's photo and Lily's stuffed elephant, and she sat on the edge of the bed. Her phone buzzed. Her sister again. Where are you? Nora typed back. Safe. I'll explain tomorrow. Hug Lily for me. She lay down without getting undressed, still in her torn uniform, still wearing her shoes. She thought she'd be awake all night, replaying everything that had happened. The elevator, the fire, the letter from her mother. But exhaustion dragged her under in seconds. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. For a confused moment, she didn't know where she was. Then it all came back. Victor, the fire, Helen, the letter, the key. Nora sat up. Her ankle was swollen and her whole body ached like she'd been hit by a truck. She checked her phone. 8:30. The bank opened in 30 minutes. She found Ethan in the kitchen, making eggs. He'd changed clothes, looked showered and rested, which seemed unfair. "Morning," he said. "Coffee?" "Please." He poured her a cup. She drank it black and burning, feeling it wake up parts of her brain that wanted to stay asleep. "I called Patricia," Ethan said. "She filed the injunction an hour ago. Green Ridge Towers can't be sold until a judge reviews the case." "How long will that take?" "Depends. Could be days, could be weeks." "And in the meantime?" "In the meantime, we go to the bank, we get those documents, and we prove you own part of that building." Nora nodded, set down the coffee. "I need to shower, and I need different clothes." "There might be something of my wife's that fits. I haven't cleaned out her closet yet." It should have felt weird, wearing a dead woman's clothes. But when Nora came back downstairs 20 minutes later in jeans and a sweater that were both slightly too big, all she felt was grateful. They drove to First National Bank in silence. The branch was in Midtown, a stone building with brass fixtures and security guards who looked like they meant business. Nora clutched the key in her pocket like a talisman. Inside, she approached the desk and asked about safe deposit boxes. The banker was a woman in her 50s with perfect makeup and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Box number?" she asked. 1408. "And your name?" "Nora Bennett." The woman typed on her computer, frowned. "I'm showing this box is registered to Marion Bennett. That's my mother. She passed away 3 years ago." "Do you have documentation showing you're the executor of her estate?" Nora's heart sank. "No, but I have the key." "I'm sorry, but without proper authorization, she left me a letter," Nora said desperately. "She told me to come here, to open this box." "I understand, but bank policy—" Ethan stepped forward. "What if we had a court order?" The banker looked at him. "Then we'd honor it. But you'd need to petition a judge, which typically takes—" "We'll get one today," Ethan said. He was already pulling out his phone, calling Patricia. Nora stood there holding the key that was supposed to unlock everything, and all she felt was tired. So tired of fighting, tired of rules designed to protect people who had lawyers and time and money. Tired of being told that what was hers wasn't actually hers without the right paperwork. "Nora," Ethan said, "Patricia says she can get an emergency order by this afternoon." "And then?" "And then we come back. We open the box. We get the documents. And what if there's nothing in there? What if my mother was wrong, or the bank lost the contents, or— We deal with that if it happens." But Nora couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. That somewhere in the city, Victor was making his own moves, covering his tracks, finding ways to destroy whatever evidence they didn't already have. Her phone rang. "Detective Reeves." "We picked up Victor Hale an hour ago," Reeves said. "But you should know, he's already lawyered up. And his lawyer is claiming you and Ethan Cole broke into his office and stole property. He's filing countercharges." Of course he was. "Did you find anything about the fire?" Nora asked. "Fire marshal confirmed it was arson. Someone disabled the smoke detectors in your apartment and the one next door. Left the gas on, set up the candle. It was designed to look accidental, but it was definitely intentional. So you can charge him." "Not yet. We need to connect Victor directly to the scene. Right now all we have is your testimony that you overheard a phone call. His lawyer is already claiming you made it up." Nora closed her eyes. "So he's going to walk." "I didn't say that. We're still investigating. But I wanted you to know what you're up against." She hung up and told Ethan what Reeves had said. "He's not going to walk," Ethan said firmly. "We have too much on him. We have circumstantial evidence and stolen documents. He has lawyers and money and 30 years of practice making things disappear. Then we make sure nothing else disappears." Patricia got the court order by 2 o'clock. They went back to the bank, presented it to the same banker, who looked less than thrilled but couldn't argue with the judge's signature. She led them downstairs to a room lined with small metal doors. Found box 1408. Nora put in her key. The banker put in hers. The box slid out. The banker left them alone in a small viewing room with the box on the table between them. "You want me to step out?" Ethan asked. "No, stay." Nora lifted the lid. Inside were documents, thick stacks of them, organized in folders with labels written in her mother's careful handwriting. Original Trust Agreement, 1952. Ownership Certificates. Board Meeting Minutes, 1985 to 1993. Correspondence with Thomas Hale. Evidence of fraud. And at the bottom, a second envelope with Nora's name on it. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, her mother's handwriting again. "Nora Wassett, if you're reading this, you made it to the bank. I'm so proud of you. These documents prove everything. The trust, the fraud, your ownership. Don't let them tell you that you don't belong. Don't let them take what's yours. You're stronger than I ever was. Finish this. Love, Mom." Nora read it 3 times before she could breathe properly. Then she started going through the documents with Ethan. The trust agreement was exactly what her mother had said. 6 families, equal shares, unanimous consent required for any sale. The ownership certificates showed Marion Bennett had inherited her mother's 1/6 share in 1984. The board meeting minutes showed Thomas Hale had forged multiple documents between 1990 and 1993, creating fake votes and fake approvals. And the evidence of fraud folder contained everything. Photocopies of the forged documents next to the originals. Handwriting analysis showing the signatures didn't match. Letters from Marion to Thomas confronting him about the forgeries. It was all there, everything they needed. "This is it," Ethan said quietly. "This proves your claim." Nora gathered the documents carefully, reverently, like they might dissolve if she handled them wrong. "What do we do now?" "We take these to Patricia, we file your ownership claim, and we make sure Victor Hale never sets foot in Greenridge Towers again." They were halfway to the car when Nora's phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She answered. "Hello? Is this Nora Bennett?" A man's voice, rough and urgent. "Who is this?" "My name is Marcus Webb. I live in Unit 903 at Greenridge." Nora's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "Victor's here. He's in the building with 3 guys I've never seen before. They're going through apartments, breaking things, and I heard him say your name. You need to stay away." "Did you call the police?" "They're on their way. But Nora, these guys aren't just looking for you. They're looking for something. Documents," I heard one of them say. "And they're tearing the place apart to find them." Nora looked at Ethan. "Victor's at Greenridge. He's looking for the documents." "He won't find them. We have everything." "No," Nora said slowly. "We have everything from the safe deposit box. But there are still papers in my apartment, the box I grabbed. If he finds those, he can't use them, not without admitting he broke into your apartment." "He doesn't need to use them. He just needs to destroy them." Ethan's expression hardened. "Then we need to get there first." They ran. The traffic was a nightmare. Every light seemed designed to slow them down. Every cab cutting them off like the universe was conspiring to keep them away from Greenridge Towers. Ethan drove with the kind of controlled aggression that came from too many board meetings and not enough physical outlets, weaving between lanes while Nora gripped the door handle and tried to call Marcus back. He didn't answer. Come on," she muttered, hitting redial, straight to voicemail. "Maybe he's talking to the police," Ethan said. "Or maybe Victor found him." She didn't want to think about that. Didn't want to imagine Marcus Webb, a 60-year-old retired teacher who'd lived in 903 since before Nora was born, facing down Victor and whatever muscle he'd brought with him. They were still 10 blocks away when Nora saw the smoke. Not thick black smoke like last night. Just a gray haze rising above the buildings, visible against the afternoon sky. Her chest constricted. "He's burning it," she said. "He's burning the whole building." Ethan pressed harder on the gas. They screeched to a stop in front of Greenridge Towers 3 minutes later. The scene was chaos. Fire trucks were already there, firefighters unrolling hoses. Residents stood on the sidewalk again, some of them still in the same pajamas as last night, looking shell-shocked. Smoke poured from windows on multiple floors. Nora jumped out before the car fully stopped. "Ma'am, you can't go in there," a firefighter shouted at her. "I live here, 14th floor." "The building's being evacuated. You need to stay back." "There are people inside. My neighbor, Marcus Webb, Unit 903, he called me 20 minutes ago and now he's not answering." The firefighter's expression shifted. He spoke into his radio. "We got a possible trapped resident, Unit 903. Static, then a response Nora couldn't make out. Ethan was beside her now, slightly out of breath. "Where's Victor Hale?" The firefighter looked confused. "Who?" "The property manager. He was here. He started this." "Sir, I don't know anything about that. My job is to put out the fire." Detective Reeves appeared from somewhere in the crowd, looking harried. When she saw Nora, something like relief crossed her face. "You're okay," Reeves said. "Marcus Webb isn't answering his phone," Nora said. "He called me, said Victor was here with 3 men, said they were tearing apart apartments looking for documents." Reeves's jaw tightened. "When was this?" 20 minutes ago, maybe less. We've been trying to locate Victor since he made bail 2 hours ago. His lawyer claimed he was going home." "He lied," Ethan said. "He came here to destroy evidence." A crash from inside the building made everyone turn. More smoke billowed from a 9th floor window. Nora's stomach lurched. That was Marcus's floor. "I'm going in," she said. "The hell you are," Reeves said. "Marcus is in there because of me, because he tried to warn me. And you going in there won't help him. It'll just give us 2 people to rescue instead of 1. But Nora was already moving. She didn't think about it, didn't give herself time to be smart. She just ran, dodging past the firefighter, past Reeves, past the barricade they'd set up. She heard shouting behind her, heard Ethan yell her name. But she was already through the front entrance, into the lobby that was thick with smoke and heat. The elevator was dead. She hit the stairs. The stairwell was clearer, the smoke not as thick yet, though she could hear fire somewhere above. Could hear the building groaning, settling, making sounds that buildings shouldn't make. She took the stairs as fast as her protesting ankle would allow. 3rd floor, 5th, 7th. At the 9th floor, she pushed through the door into a hallway filled with smoke. The fire was close. She could hear it crackling, could see orange light dancing against the walls. Most of the apartment doors stood open, residents already evacuated. But 903's door was closed. Nora ran to it, tried the handle, locked. "Marcus," she shouted, pounding on the door. "Marcus, it's Nora." No answer. She stepped back and kicked the door near the handle, the way she'd seen in movies. Pain shot through her already injured ankle and the door didn't budge. "Move." She turned. Ethan was there, breathing hard, looking furious. "I told you to stay outside," he said, "and I didn't listen. Help me with this door." He looked like he wanted to argue, then didn't. They both kicked together, and on the 3rd try the frame splintered and the door swung open. Inside, Marcus Webb was lying on the floor near the couch, not moving. Blood matted his gray hair. The apartment was trashed, furniture overturned, papers everywhere, drawers pulled out and emptied. Nora dropped to her knees beside him. Marcus, can you hear me?" He groaned, his eyes fluttered open. "Nora? I'm here. We're getting you out." "They were looking for something. I told them I didn't know what they were talking about. One of them hit me." "Don't talk. Save your strength." Ethan was already on his phone, trying to get signal, cursing when it wouldn't connect. "We need to move him. Now." They got Marcus to his feet, one arm around each of their shoulders. He was heavier than he looked, dead weight sagging between them. The smoke was getting thicker, pouring in from somewhere down the hall. They made it to the stairwell, started down. Marcus's feet barely worked, dragging on the steps. Nora's lungs were burning. Her eyes streamed tears from the smoke. 8th floor, 7th. They heard footsteps above them, heavy, fast, coming down. Ethan looked up. "Keep moving." But the footsteps were getting closer. Nora glanced back and saw 3 men descending the stairs, moving with purpose. One of them was Victor. "There!" Victor shouted, pointing at them. "Go," Ethan said, pushing Nora and Marcus ahead. "Go, go, go." They stumbled down faster. 6th floor, 5th. Behind them, Victor and his men were gaining ground. 4th floor. One of the men caught up, grabbed the back of Ethan's jacket, yanked him backward. Ethan lost his grip on Marcus and spun, throwing a punch that connected with the man's jaw. The man stumbled but didn't fall. "Keep going," Ethan yelled at Nora. She wanted to help him, wanted to stay. But Marcus was barely conscious and getting heavier by the second, and if she stopped, they'd both die here. She kept going. Third floor. Behind her, she heard fighting, heard bodies hitting walls, heard Victor's voice sharp and angry, shouting orders. Second floor. She could see the lobby now, could see daylight through the front entrance. Firefighters were coming in, hauling equipment. She screamed for help, and two of them ran toward her, taking Marcus's weight, lifting him like he was nothing. "There are more people in the stairwell," she gasped. "My friend, and 3 men chasing us." One firefighter spoke into his radio while the other helped Marcus toward the exit. Nora turned back to the stairs. Ethan was at the second-floor landing, holding his own against 2 men while Victor hung back, watching. Ethan's lip was bleeding, and he was favoring his bad knee, but he was still standing. Then Victor pulled something from his jacket. A gun. Nora's scream was lost in the chaos. Ethan saw it too, froze. The 2 men stepped back, letting Victor have a clear shot. "This is your fault," Victor said, and his voice was calm, dead calm. The voice of someone who'd already made peace with whatever came next. "All of this, the investigation, the injunction, you couldn't just let it go." "Put the gun down," Ethan said. "You know what's in my apartment right now? Copies of every document I need to prove the building is mine. The real documents, not your forged trust papers. My lawyer is filing them with the court as we speak." "They're fake," Nora said from behind Victor. All 3 men turned to look at her. "Whatever you have, they're fake. We have the originals. From my mother's safe deposit box. The real trust agreement. The real ownership certificates. And we have proof you forged the transfer deed." Victor's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. Or fear. "You're lying," he said. "We have handwriting analysis. We have testimony from Helen Carver, who worked with my mother for 15 years. We have everything. It won't matter. Do you know how long court cases take? How much they cost? By the time you prove anything, I'll have sold this building 3 times over and disappeared with the money." "You can't sell it," Ethan said. "There's an injunction. The sale is frozen. Injunctions can be overturned, especially when the person who filed it is dead." He raised the gun. A voice shouted from below. "Drop the weapon! Police!" Detective Reeves was in the lobby, her own gun drawn, pointed up the stairs. Behind her were 3 uniformed officers, all armed. Victor looked down at them, looked at Nora, looked at Ethan. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Victor lowered the gun, not dropping it, just lowering it to his side. "You think you've won," he said quietly, "but you haven't. This building is a money pit. It's falling apart. Even if you own it, you'll never be able to afford the repairs. You'll lose it anyway, to the bank, to the city, to someone." "Maybe," Nora said, "but it won't be to you." Victor's finger twitched toward the trigger. Reeves fired. The shot was deafening in the enclosed stairwell. Victor jerked backward, the gun falling from his hand, clattering down the steps. He grabbed his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers, his face twisted in shock and pain. The 2 men with him put their hands up immediately. Officers swarmed up the stairs. Secured Victor, secured the other 2 men. Reeves was still pointing her gun, steady as stone, until everyone was in handcuffs. Then she lowered it and looked at Nora. "You okay?" she asked. Nora nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. Her hands were shaking. Her legs felt like water. The smoke was still thick and getting thicker. "We need to clear this building," Reeves said. "Now." They evacuated. Firefighters helped Ethan down the stairs. Paramedics took Victor, under police escort, to an ambulance. The 2 men who'd worked for him were shoved into a patrol car. Outside, the air had never tasted so good. Nora found Marcus sitting in another ambulance, an oxygen mask on his face, a bandage on his head. He gave her a weak thumbs up. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry you got hurt because of me." He pulled off the mask. "You kidding? That's the most excitement I've had in years. Though next time maybe warn me before you start a war with the property manager." Despite everything, Nora laughed. It came out shaky and slightly hysterical, but it was still a laugh. Ethan found her a minute later. His lip was split and swelling. His jacket was torn. He looked like he'd been through a blender. "You're an idiot," he said. "I know. You could have died." So could you. I'm trained in corporate warfare, not actual warfare. Could have fooled me. They stood there in the street, surrounded by emergency vehicles and displaced residents, in a building that was still burning but would probably survive, and Nora felt something shift in her chest, something that had been locked tight for 3 years, since her mother died, maybe longer. "We did it," she said quietly. "We're not done yet," Ethan said. "We still have to file your claim, still have to prove ownership, still have to deal with Victor's lawyers and—" "Ethan, what?" "We did it." He looked at her properly, saw what she meant, nodded. "Yeah," he said. "We did." The fire was contained by evening. The damage was extensive but not catastrophic. 3 floors would need major repairs. The 9th floor, where Marcus lived, was basically destroyed, but the building stood. Nora sat on the curb across the street, watching firefighters pack up their equipment. Residents were being told they could return to their apartments in a few hours, once the smoke cleared and the building was deemed safe. The ones whose apartments were damaged would be housed temporarily at the city's expense. Detective Reeves sat down beside her. "Victor Hale is being charged with attempted murder, arson, fraud, embezzlement, and about 6 other things my captain is still adding to the list," Reeves said. "His bail is being revoked. He's not getting out this time." "What about the other 2? "Singing like canaries. Turns out when you hire muscle to commit arson, they're not particularly loyal when facing 20 years in prison. We've got statements placing Victor at the scene last night and today. We've got phone records showing he called them minutes after being released on bail. It's airtight." "And the building?" "That's between you and the courts. But off the record, with what you've got in those documents from the safe deposit box, I'd say you've got a strong case." Nora nodded, didn't say anything. Reeves stood up. "For what it's worth, your mother would be proud." That broke something loose. Nora felt tears on her face before she realized she was crying. Reeves squeezed her shoulder once, then walked away. Ethan appeared with 2 coffees from somewhere, handed her one, sat down. "Patricia filed your ownership claim an hour ago," he said. "She's also filing criminal complaints on behalf of the other shareholders from the original trust. Turns out 2 of them are still alive, and they're very interested in getting their money back from the Hale family." "How much money are we talking about?" "Based on the fraudulent invoices, somewhere north of $3 million, plus interest, plus damages." Nora choked on her coffee. $3 million? That's conservative. Could be more once forensic accountants finish going through the books. That's insane. That's fraud. Sustained over 30 years. Nora stared at the building. Her building. The building her grandmother had bought into in 1952. The building her mother had fought for and lost. The building that had nearly killed her twice in 2 days. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we wait for a judge to review the case. Could take weeks, but Patricia thinks we'll get a favorable ruling. The evidence is pretty overwhelming." "And then?" "And then you become the largest single shareholder of Greenridge Towers. You'll have a say in how it's managed, who runs it, what happens to it." "I don't know how to manage a building." "Neither did Victor, and look how that turned out." "Fair point." They sat in silence for a while. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The kind of sunset that belonged in a painting, not in a city that smelled like smoke and looked like a war zone. "What are you going to do?" Ethan asked. "If you win. If the building is really yours." Nora had thought about this. Had thought about it in the moments between running for her life and filing police reports. Had thought about it while watching her home burn. "I'm going to fix it," she said. "The right way. Not with fake invoices and contractors who don't show up. I'm going to actually repair the roof and replace the boiler and fix the plumbing. I'm going to make it safe." "That'll be expensive." "I know." "You might need investors." "I know that too." Ethan smiled just a little. "I might know someone who invests in buildings." "Yeah? He any good?" "Depends on who you ask, but he's got capital, and he's recently discovered he cares about doing things the right way." Nora looked at him, at this billionaire who'd been trapped in an elevator with her 3 days ago and could have walked away at any point but hadn't. Who'd broken into an office and climbed down a fire escape and fought 3 men in a burning stairwell because he'd decided her fight was his fight too. "I don't want charity," she said. "Good, because I don't do charity." I do investments. And I think Greenridge Towers, properly managed, could be a good one. Even if it means affordable housing? Even if it means keeping rents low enough that people like me can actually live there? Especially then. Nora held out her hand. Partners? Ethan shook it. Partners. 3 weeks later, Nora stood in a courtroom wearing a suit that Ethan's assistant had helped her pick out because Nora had never owned a suit in her life. The judge, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses and an expression that suggested she'd seen every scam in the book, reviewed the documents spread across her bench. The original trust agreement, the ownership certificates, the proof of forgery, all of it. Victor's lawyer, an expensive-looking man in an even more expensive suit, had argued for an hour that the documents were fake, that the trust was invalid, that Nora had no standing to file a claim. Patricia, who turned out to be terrifying in a courtroom, had systematically destroyed every argument with the kind of precision that came from 20 years of practice and no patience for liars. Now the judge was reading, her expression unreadable. The courtroom was mostly empty. Just Nora and Ethan and Patricia on one side, Victor's lawyer on the other. Victor himself was absent, still in custody awaiting trial on the criminal charges. The judge looked up. "I've reviewed all the evidence," she said, "and I'm prepared to issue a ruling." Nora's heart stopped. "It's clear to me that substantial fraud was committed in the transfer of ownership for Greenridge Towers. The documents presented by Ms. Bennett are authentic, certified, and corroborated by multiple sources. The so-called transfer deed that Victor Hale relied upon is a forgery." Victor's lawyer started to object, but the judge cut him off with a look. "I'm granting Ms. Bennett's claim. Effective immediately, she is recognized as the legal owner of 1/6 of Greenridge Towers, as inherited from her mother, Marion Bennett. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full audit of Hale Property Management's financial records and placing the building under temporary receivership until ownership can be properly established." The judge banged her gavel. It was over. Nora stood there, not quite believing it. Patricia was gathering papers. Ethan was smiling. Victor's lawyer looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. "We won," Patricia said. "Congratulations." They walked out of the courthouse into a cold afternoon. November in the city, the kind of day where you could see your breath and everyone walked faster to get where they were going. Nora stood on the steps and looked at the city stretched out in front of her. The same city she'd lived in her entire life, the same buildings and streets and noise, but somehow it all looked different now. "You okay?" Ethan asked. "I own a building," Nora said, "or part of one, but that's insane." "You own part of a building that needs about $2 million in repairs." Way to kill the mood. Just being realistic. Nora's phone rang. Her sister. "Did you win?" her sister asked before Nora could even say hello. "We won!" Screaming, happy screaming. Then Lily's voice in the background, babbling something that might have been congratulations or might have been nonsense. "I have to go," her sister said. "Lily just pulled over a lamp, but I'm so proud of you. Mom would be proud of you." She hung up. Nora stood there with the phone in her hand, and she let herself believe it. Let herself believe that somewhere, somehow, her mother knew. Knew that Nora had finished what she'd started, had taken back what was theirs. "I need a job," Nora said suddenly. Ethan looked confused. "What?" "I can't keep working at the diner. I can't clean offices. If I'm going to do this, if I'm going to actually manage this building and fix it properly, I need time. I need to learn. I need a job," Ethan finished. "Running Greenridge Towers. I don't know how to run a building. Neither does anyone, until they learn. And you know that building better than anyone. You know the people who live there. You know what needs fixing. You know what matters. That doesn't qualify me to... It qualifies you more than Victor Hale ever was. And I'll help. Patricia will help. We'll find you a property manager who actually knows what they're doing. But the vision, the direction, the decisions about who gets to stay and what rent looks like, and how we prioritize repairs, that should be yours." Nora wanted to say no. Wanted to say she wasn't ready, wasn't qualified, wasn't the person for this job. But she was tired of saying no to herself, tired of playing small. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Okay, I'll do it." Ethan grinned, the first real, unguarded grin she'd seen from him. It made him look younger, less tired. Then let's go look at our building, he said. They drove to Greenridge Towers. The scaffolding was already up on the damaged floors. A new property management company, one Ethan had vetted personally, had taken over temporary operations. The residents were slowly moving back in, one floor at a time as apartments were cleared for occupancy. Nora's apartment was still off limits. Too much smoke damage. But standing in the lobby, looking up at 19 floors of brick and broken dreams and stubborn survival, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Marcus was there talking to one of the contractors about his apartment. When he saw Nora, his face lit up. "There she is," he said, "the woman who saved our building." "I didn't save anything. I just stopped it from being stolen." Potato, potato. Other residents came over, Mrs. and Chen from the 5th floor, who'd lived there since 1978, the Rodriguez family from 12. People Nora had seen in the elevator and the stairwell and the laundry room for years, but never really talked to. They talked now. They thanked her. They asked what was going to happen to the building. They asked if their rent was going to go up. "No," Nora said, and she meant it. "Rent stays the same, at least until we can make this place actually worth what you're paying." Someone laughed. Someone else started clapping. And then they were all clapping, this ragged group of people who'd survived bad management and worse luck, and a property manager who'd literally tried to burn them out. Nora felt tears on her face again. She was getting real tired of crying. But these were good tears, the kind that came from relief and exhaustion and the bone-deep satisfaction of knowing you'd done something right. Later, after the residents had filtered back to their apartments and the contractors had left for the day, Nora and Ethan stood in the lobby, alone. "Thank you," Nora said. "For what?" "For believing me, for helping, for not walking away when you could have." "Your mother saved my life," Ethan said. "It seemed like the least I could do." "It was more than the least." "Then you're welcome." They stood there in the lobby that smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings, and Nora thought about the elevator, about being trapped between floors with a stranger who'd turned out to be exactly the person she needed. "You know what's funny?" she said. "What?" "If that elevator hadn't broken down, none of this would have happened. I never would have met you, never would have known about the fraud, never would have found my mother's documents." "Funny how that works." "Yeah." Ethan checked his watch. "I should go. Emma's recital is tonight, and if I miss it, my mother will never forgive me." "Go. Tell Emma I said hi. You should come to the recital. She'd like to meet you." "She doesn't know me." "She knows I've been helping someone. She knows it matters. That's enough for Emma." Nora thought about it. Thought about meeting Ethan's daughter, about stepping into his world the way he'd stepped into hers. "Maybe next time," she said. "I'll hold you to that." He left, and Nora stayed. Walked through the lobby, up the stairs, the elevator was still being repaired, to the 14th floor, to her apartment. The door was marked with yellow caution tape. She ducked under it and went inside. The smoke damage was worse than she'd thought. The walls would need repainting, the floors would need refinishing, half her furniture would need replacing. But it was still her apartment, still her home. She walked to the bedroom, to the closet where she'd kept the box of her mother's papers. The box was gone, obviously. Evidence now. But she could still see the space where it had been, the dust outline on the closet floor. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Patricia just sent over the receivership paperwork. You'll be officially managing Greenridge Towers by end of week. Congrats, boss." Nora smiled. Boss. She liked the sound of that. 6 months later, on a warm spring morning, Nora stood on the roof of Greenridge Towers and watched contractors install the last section of new roofing. Below her, the city stretched out in every direction, millions of lives intersecting and colliding and moving forward. The building was different now. Better. The boiler had been replaced in December. The plumbing was upgraded in January. They'd repainted the lobby, fixed the elevator, replaced the security cameras. March had brought new windows for the bottom 6 floors. April had seen the fire escapes reinforced and certified safe. It had cost every penny of the settlement money from Victor's criminal case, plus a loan from Ethan's company that Nora was determined to pay back with interest. But it was worth it. Greenridge Towers was no longer a building people apologized for living in. It was becoming a place people chose, a place that was safe and clean and actually maintained. Rent hadn't increased. Nora had made sure of that, had fought with Ethan about it more than once, but he'd eventually agreed that keeping the building affordable was more important than maximizing profits. Turns out, he'd said, there's more than one way to measure success. Nora's phone rang. She answered without looking, expecting Patricia or one of the contractors. Nora Bennett? A woman's voice. Professional. Speaking. This is Jennifer Walsh from the Mayor's Office of Housing Development. We've been following what you've done with Green Ridge Towers, and we're impressed. The mayor would like to meet with you about a potential partnership. We're looking for models of affordable housing preservation, and your building is exactly the kind of success story we want to replicate. Nora almost laughed. 6 months ago, she'd been a waitress who could barely pay rent. Now the mayor's office was calling her a success story. I'd be happy to meet, she said. They set a date for the following week. Nora hung up and stared at her phone. A text came through. Ethan. Lunch? Emma wants to meet you. I've run out of excuses. Nora had been putting off meeting Emma for months, partly because she was busy, partly because meeting someone's kid felt significant in a way she wasn't sure she was ready for. But she was tired of saying no to things that scared her. Okay? She texted back. Where? Lou's Diner. Emma wants to see where you used to work. Of course she did. Nora arrived at Lou's 20 minutes early out of habit, even though she hadn't worked there in 4 months. Lou was behind the counter, looking exactly the same, except now when he saw her, he smiled. Heard you're running that whole building now, he said. Part of it. Still counts. You want coffee? Always. He poured her a cup and she sat at the counter where she'd poured coffee for 1,000 other people over the years. The diner looked smaller now, or maybe she'd just gotten bigger. Ethan arrived with Emma right on time. His daughter was 6, small for her age, with dark hair and pigtails and her father's serious eyes. She wore a dress covered in dinosaurs and sneakers that lit up when she walked. You're Nora, Emma said, not shy at all. I am. You're Emma. Dad says you saved your building. I had a lot of help. He says you're brave. Nora glanced at Ethan, who looked slightly embarrassed. I don't know about brave, Nora said. Stubborn, maybe. What's the difference? Good question. I'm still figuring that out. Emma climbed onto the stool next to Nora and ordered pancakes with extra syrup. Ethan ordered eggs. Nora got toast she didn't need just to have something to do with her hands. They talked. About Emma's school. About the building. About the recital Nora had missed, which Emma described in exhaustive detail, including who messed up and who cried and who threw up backstage. I didn't throw up, Emma said proudly. I almost did, but I didn't. That's very impressive, Nora said, and meant it. After lunch, they walked. Emma wanted to see Green Ridge Towers, wanted to see what Nora had been working on. So they went, the 3 of them, and Nora gave Emma a tour of the lobby and showed her the new elevator and explained how the old one had broken down and trapped her and Ethan together. Is that when you became friends? Emma asked. Nora looked at Ethan. He looked back. Yeah, Nora said. I guess it is. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. She ran ahead to look at the bulletin board, now covered with community notices and photos of residents instead of angry notes about Victor. She likes you, Ethan said quietly. I like her too. That's good, because I was thinking if you're not too busy saving buildings and meeting with mayors, maybe you'd want to have dinner sometime. The 3 of us. Like a date? Like dinner, with my daughter, who will ask approximately 800 questions and probably spill something. Nora smiled. That sounds perfect. They had dinner the following Saturday, and the Saturday after that. And somewhere between the 3rd dinner and the 4th, it stopped being about Emma and started being about all 3 of them. About building something new from the wreckage of what they'd lost. It wasn't smooth. Nora still had nightmares about the fire. Ethan still had days where he could barely function under the weight of missing his wife. Emma still asked questions about her mother that Ethan couldn't always answer. But they figured it out, together. A year after the elevator broke down, Nora stood in the lobby of Green Ridge Towers and watched movers carry furniture into Unit 1407, her apartment. Finally repaired. Finally ready. She'd kept everything she could from before. Her grandmother's photos, her mother's letters, the trust documents that had changed everything, But she'd added new things too. A couch that didn't sag. A kitchen table big enough for three. A second bedroom that Emma had already claimed for sleepovers. Ethan helped carry boxes. Emma directed traffic like a tiny general, and Nora stood in the middle of it all and felt something she hadn't felt since before her mother died. Home. Not because of the apartment or the building or the neighborhood, but because of the people. Because of the community they were building together. Because of the second chance she'd been given when that elevator stopped between floors, and she'd met a stranger who'd become something more. Marcus appeared in the doorway, recovered from his injuries, moved into a renovated unit on the 8th floor. "Housewarming gift," he said, holding up a plant. "It's hard to kill. I checked." "Thank you," Nora said, taking it. "No, thank you. For not giving up on this place. For fighting when it would have been easier to walk away." Other residents stopped by throughout the day. Mrs. Chen brought dumplings. The Rodriguez family brought flowers. People Nora had lived next to for years but never really known until crisis had forced them together. That night, after everyone left and Emma was asleep in the second bedroom and Ethan was doing dishes in the kitchen, Nora stood at her window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Victor Hale was in prison, serving 15 years for arson and fraud and attempted murder. His lawyers had tried every appeal and lost every one. Somewhere out there, other buildings were falling apart. Other families were being pushed out. Other people were fighting the same fight Nora had fought. But here, in this building, on this block, things were different. Better. Not perfect. Not easy. But better. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "My mom. How she'd probably laugh at all this. At me running a building when I can barely run my own life. You're doing pretty well from where I'm standing. You're biased. Completely." They stood there in the window, watching the city lights flicker on as darkness fell, watching their reflection in the glass. Two people who'd been broken in different ways, pieced back together by circumstance and stubbornness, and something that might have been luck or might have been fate. Nora didn't believe in fate, didn't believe things happened for a reason or that the universe had a plan. But she believed in this, in the choice to keep fighting when it would be easier to give up, in the people who showed up when you needed them, in the possibility that sometimes, if you were stubborn enough and lucky enough and brave enough, you could take back what was stolen and build something better from the ruins. The elevator in the lobby dinged. Someone was coming home. Nora smiled. Home. That's what this was now. Not just an apartment or a building or a fight she'd won. Home. And she'd spent everything she had to keep it.